Welcome to Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben Chung
and Kevin Zaw.
Each week we'll be breaking bread and having real, raw, and vulnerable talks about life, faith, and everything in between, and always over a fire meal.
Thanks for joining our table today. Let's eat.
Folks, welcome back to another episode of Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben
and Kevin.
And today we got the homie in the pod. Today we have West Coast Director of Israel Christian Nexus. Ooh. He's the Global Leadership Board member of Silicon Valley's first faith-based app, Pray.com.
Ooh.
Millennial strategist for Church United and keynote speaker. We have lead pastor of Abundant Living Family Church, host of Beyond the Letter podcast, husband, father, and fellow Disneyland enthusiast. We have Adam Mesa in the pod.
That's it. What's up?
That's the most important part of that whole intro.
Disney season pass holders.
So I got
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so are you holding a season pass?
Yeah, we hold season pass, bro. I've had a season pass since I was like 13.
It's different now, though.
I don't think, but
it's
like now
way
you
more
couldn't get
expensive.
into it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
That's
oh,
how
really?
It's, yeah, I think it's closed
They
off.
brought the SoCal resident pass back, though. I just
Did
saw
they?
a billboard near my place.
Yeah.
That said the SoCal
But then they closed
resident.
it down again, right? It's
Oh, is it closed?
Yeah.
People
they
keep
ping
buying
pong
it.
They ping pong it, man.
Yeah.
They ping pong
Disney-
it.
is like-
Disney's money is in season pass holders.
That
It's not
makes
even
sense.
in fully in people because they get that reoccurring
Why do they?
payment.
Why do they make it so limited then?
Because
if
we
that's-
show up too much.
Oh, so they're
Yes.
like,
So
they got to
they have to
even
have
it
a
out.
certain amount open for the
Yes.
people who come for vacation.
Oh,
Because
that
if they
makes
just
sense.
completely opened it, we would overcrowd and then it wouldn't become a vacation hub
Legit, like
anymore.
if Disneyland was only for SoCal residents, they
It
would be
the
fine.
best, bro.
They would be fine. They don't need any tourism. Like we would give them
It'd be
just
an
enough
Equinox
business.
gym membership, basically.
This is a crazy conversation.
Yeah, dude. Shout out Disneyland. Shout out Disneyland. man.
Sponsor us.
yeah.
Well, okay. So Adam, you came all the way out here. You came from Rancho Cucamonga.
That's it.
And so whenever we have people that are like that aren't from LA, we try to think of like what is something that we can kind of feed them that's kind of an LA staple.
Yep.
So today we're having Howlin Ray's. Howlin
excited for
Ray's is it is a landmark of LA. It is a LA staple. It's funny, it's Nashville hot chicken, but they took the Nashville hot chicken
right.
recipe, they brought it to LA.
Yeah.
And so this is their first flagship location, which is located in Chinatown, which is very close to here. But yeah, this place every day they
Well,
have.
might be from Nashville, but it's Korean owned, right?
Is it Korean owned?
No.
It's not Korean owned.
He is white.
He's a white guy. No
Yes.
way. Just happens to be in Chinatown.
They just happen to be in Chinatown. Yeah.
No,
And
but I think it's a few partners. I think it's two guys. I haven't formally met them, but I've heard of them so many times. I'm so sorry I'm blanking on the names. I did meet them at an event, so I feel
his
terrible
name is
right
John
now.
That's all right.
something.
Yeah,
Anyway.
They know of you too.
Forgive me.
So
Forgive
yeah.
me.
They know
We will know you
them.
guys.
Yeah.
Y'all will know us.
Yeah.
They got another location recently opened up in Pasadena, but this is
Yeah.
their original location. So Howlin Ray's today we're having, so they're known for their Nashville hot chicken. They have like the full-on chicken. Today we're getting down on their wings. They got tenders and stuff. So today we got their wings. This is their box combo. And so this is spicy. So I was like asking them, I'm like, hey, what is like the safety level? Like you want to maybe go with like medium. That's kind of, it still has a kick.
Yeah.
So we got their medium, we got their mild, and then we got their hot. And I like their hot.
And every culture, like their mediums, milds, and hots are all different.
It's all over the place.
Like I went to a
Yeah.
Thai place one time, and she's like 1 to 5. What do you want? I'm like, let me get a 1. It felt like a 10.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Depending
should've
on
said
like
0.
where
so
it's
it's like
coming
everyone
from.
is like,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
That's
feel
funny.
like we got waters here
To
just
be-
in
I know,
case.
yeah.
Yeah,
you
we
That's
know?
why I was like, to
ready?
be safe,
Yeah.
let me start with
So this
mild,
is
and then
kinda
I can
like,
maybe graduate to hot.
The
but
Good Service Hot Ones collab, I guess. I don't know.
That's it. Yeah.
But so before we get into the food, we do a first bite reflection, sort of a prompt, something to kind of kick off the conversation. And as I was praying for you this morning, and just kind of I asked God, like, Lord, what do you kind of want us to talk about? What's a thought that you want us to have? And so I know you are the leading pastor of a pretty big church. And you do a podcast, you do a couple podcasts, right? From Beyond the Letter, Beyond I Do. And there's always, I feel like you are probably never without an opportunity to be speaking, right? And to be doing. And then you also have a family, you know, you're married, you got kids. So like, there's like, when I thought about it, I was like, man, I'm sure this dude is like on 24/7. And then, you know, I thought about like, you know, as individuals, we do need, I mean, whether you're extroverted, introverted, I don't know what you kind of, you know, would sort of identify yourself as, but like, we all need time to quiet, right? Like we need time to shut off and like not be on. And whatever pocket that looks like is, you know, different for people. So what I was thinking about and praying about was, what does it look like for you to quiet yourself? What does it look like for you to quiet yourself? And so, just let's hold that thought. Yeah. I'm gonna go in with there. So yeah, we got
their doing the sandwich first.
I got the sando.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like their classic sando sandwich here.
And so, on the I've had almost everything in LA for the most part.
Okay.
Because I'm a big LA fiend.
There you go.
Except for Howlin Ray.
Except this. So look, Holy Spirit gave me the right prompting this morning. So here we go. So we're gonna do a little air dab here.
Air dab.
And then I'm
here we go. For this.
First bite.
Here we go.
Right, I'm gonna sauce mine first.
Oh man, I love it.
One thing I appreciate about Howlin Ray's, right off the bat, is the amount of flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like no pocket of absence of flavor.
Yeah.
And it's the textures too. I mean, you got the crispy chicken, and you have the sweetness of the sauce, crunch of the pickle. The bread is like, is that a potato bun bread too? It's like super soft bread.
I feel like it's a potato bun, just from the way it smashes.
How you feeling
it's
about
nice.
that, Adam?
I like it. Is this would this be are they using a breast on their sandwiches, or are they using
that's a chicken breast, yeah.
See, 'cause I felt like people started going into the sandwiches with the dark meat, and it's not my jam. It's not my jam. So this, to me, it's hitting because some of the other like popular places, they've been hitting more of the actual, what is it, the leg spread out or whatever. But yeah, this is.
And this is not like a dry breast. You know what I'm saying? This is like there's juicy in there, man. Shout out Howlin Ray's.
Thank you,
Howlin Ray's.
Thank you.
For first time experience, it's money for sure.
And then you got to get into that wing in a bit, but
yeah,
before we do that, so yeah, what does it look like? What does it look like for you to quiet yourself?
I think for me, overall, number one, it's very difficult. I've been diagnosed with high intensity ADHD.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow. Okay.
No one understood it when I was younger, high school, stuff like that. I had a 1.4 in high school GPA.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like, and I was trying. When people ask, they go, "Oh, it's because you weren't trying." Oh no, I was trying. But the education system isn't built for kids like me. And so, you know, there's two types of kind of ADHD. There's ADHD that makes you deficient in learning, which then you kind of get put in like special needs classes and stuff like that. And then there's ADHD where you're not deficient in learning. You're exceptional at learning. It's just you have to learn a very specific way. And so no one ever categorizes or teaches those things, right? We normally just use ADHD as an excuse on laziness, you know. But I'm high achieving ADHD in terms of my drive. Not in saying that I've achieved a lot, but it's my drive is a high achieving drive with ADHD. So, you know, quieting your mind for me, given this quote unquote deficiency, may look different than the average person, you know, because some people may be able to just sit in a corner and quietly sit on a lazy boy or just lay down on the couch and quiet their mind in a very intent meditative state. You know, for me, quieting my mind tends to look like fixating as much as I can on one idea and sitting on it, because that can actually quiet my mind better than just trying to sit. Like my brother's one of my best friends, and his idea of heaven is sitting on a beach in a lounge chair for 5 hours. That's my idea of hell. You know, like, so wow. It's very different. You know, my other best friend, Aaron, his idea of heaven, we talk about all the time. What's your idea of heaven? Even though we know theologically what heaven looks like, but just this idea of like serenity, right? So for my other best friend, Aaron, his idea of serenity is at a park, just sitting with his kids, you know? and just seeing geese walk by and all this stuff like that. To me, though my kids part is the exciting part, but sitting and watching geese by a lake, it's another version of hell for me as well. So it's this idea that like for me, quieting my mind somewhat looks like it's fixating on some type of idea and sitting on it and resting on it. And normally for me, it comes to my faith. And so any given season, I may be wrestling through an idea, and I want to take time to just separate and sit on it with the Lord. So whether it's a verse, whether it's a concept, like right now, I'm been quieting my mind and sitting on this idea where, Jesus tells people in one of his sermons, what are the greatest commandments? And one of them, he says, you're to love others as you love yourself. So for me, quieting my mind would be sitting on that idea, because actually in culture and society, loving yourself is seen as a negative thing. Yeah. And loving yourself seems as, when you think about as much anxiety and depression that exists, to love yourself, like you hear it all the time. You watch The View or another type of women's television, they'll tell women like the fix to your problems is you just need to love yourself more. But it seems like we're pretty good at loving ourselves, and so part of quieting my mind would just be like taking a thought like that and just sitting on it, reflecting on it, not making it part of my job, which is like to prepare a sermon or whatever it is, and just like sitting with the Holy Spirit and like, Lord, what do you mean by that? Because in a world where everyone acts like we don't love ourselves and we need to do more of it, why, because the Word of God is truth, why would Jesus tell us to love others as we love ourselves? So for me, quietness is I have to preoccupy my mind, and in that discussion with God, in sitting with God, I can feel his stillness and I can feel the rest that is needed, whereas if I engaged in anything else that would be quote unquote rest, it would be mentally taxing for me. Because if I went to the beach, I'd wonder how deep is the ocean, how many waves come every minute. I'd be counting each wave. Got it. It's not quiet for me. For someone with extreme ADHD, so sitting on a beach is not quiet.
So when you're sitting with an idea, are you just in a room that is zero distraction? You're just like, okay. So I
can have distraction. Okay. It's fine. I can kind of zero anything out in thought. My wife jokes and she calls it like my little like mind palace, because I could be in the room and I could just not be there at the same time. So we joke, and we have a rule, and we've helped a lot of marriages out with other guys or girls that may be like me, is like, my wife knows she has to call my name to get my attention. So if we're in the room, she can't just be like, I was at the store today, blah, 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 blah. Right. Even if I'm not doing anything, I may not mentally be there. And so she has to say, Adam, right, or babe, get my attention, bring me back to reality. That happens all the time. And so that's something her and I actively have to do regularly. So for me, but most of the time for me, it could just be sitting at my kitchen table, sitting down in my living room on the couch, and just kind of sitting with these thoughts, and sitting in my backyard, whatever it may be.
Is this how regular is this practice? Is this daily? Is this like a once a day in the week?
It's probably 3 or 4 times a week. Okay. I wish I could do it daily in that sense. I mean, I definitely spend time with the Lord daily with like a sense of devotion or whatever that may be. But in terms of just trying to be calm and quiet, which is like a very difficult task for me, it would come upon really like when I feel it's necessary and I feel like my mind can rest with something. Because I can't particularly just choose to rest. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but if anyone kind of has the same type of things that I deal with, like you can't just choose to unplug. Unplugging for me has to be provoked with some type of idea or thought or need to sit down quietly. I also love quietness. To me is like 2 or 3 people. I could do that really easily. Like I love just sitting with 2 or 3 people. And I can get a lot of rest from that. So like we have a mutual friend, Chung. My boy Phil's here. Like if he and I can just like go sit somewhere together at a restaurant or something like that, like I leave and I'm like so rested, I can, my wife calls it like time with my boys. My wife can see if I'm overstimulated. She'll say, hey, I'm gonna take the boys to my mom's tonight. Call a couple of your friends. Let's go out to dinner. Like she knows that quiets my soul. Need that. Yeah. For my wife, working out for her is quiet to her soul. She sits, she was a professional athlete, so she'll go on a treadmill, go out to the park, jog. I can't do that. That's work for me. I'm not enjoying that. She's enjoying that, right? So quietness for me, it may relate to some people or may not, but I think everyone's a little bit unique on where they can find it.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Are you like extroverted? You like being around people? Does that energize you? I know, like you just said, like certain people that energize you.
I like being around. I like being around certain type of people. I'm a pastor, so I love everybody. Yeah. Like anyone else, there's some people that get on your nerves, but I'm not like a golden retriever person. Yeah. I don't light up when people are in a room. I light up when my type of people walk in the room. Yeah. And it's not an ethnicity and it's not a culture. It's a way that someone may carry themselves. Totally. And so I like people who are passionate about anything. I like people who are not fake in any way, and unfortunately where we're at in LA and Inland Empire, there's not a whole lot of people like that. They are there, but there are also people who are not real. And so I like realness. I like rawness. I'll take someone that's raw trying to pursue Jesus than someone who thinks they figured it out, and wants to teach me something every 2 seconds. So it's like, those are the type of people that I enjoy. So I'm very, Will has done all the personality test stuff before. So Will says it's selective extrovert. Oh. So I'm naturally an introvert, but the moment I connect with someone, I can switch to an extrovert. Gotcha. Whereas someone who's an introvert, that's just who they are. Even when they're around people they care about and love. Like my dad's an extreme introvert. My dad be around us. He's still quiet. He's still self-reflective. He's still but he gets on a pulpit, he preaches, it's more the Holy Spirit working through him. But whether my dad likes you or doesn't like you, his demeanor is pretty much the same. He's a quiet Mexican Latino dude who just loves to work hard. That's him, Where me, I've met you guys many times. We spent time, we've broken bread, we've hung out together. Yeah. So it's like, to me, I could open up with that because I'm like, I trust these guys. I know they're not gonna like judge me, and not that there's anything I'm fear of, but just like I know I could be me without someone kind of looking sideways, So that that's where I'm at in terms of an extrovert. Yeah.
I love that he mentioned that Will's the guy that takes all the tests. Yeah. I caught that real fast while he was talking. Sounds like Will. Because I thought about that. I was like, wait a minute. He is. He's that guy. He is. That goes, Kev, you got to read this. You got to look at this. He's like, because he's just, you know what? He's a good researcher, man. And you need friends like that, So I'm like, yes, Will, thank you for taking all the tests for us.
And I always make fun of him because he's the only guy I've ever known that's a doctoral student dropout. All the college dropouts I know, they didn't finish bachelor. It's like, you did the bachelor's, master's, and 2 years of doctoral study, and you dropped out with 6 months left. Right. The first guy I've ever met that was a doctoral student dropout.
That's so good, man.
But we love you.
Yes.
But we love you.
That's my boy.
Something you were saying about when you are selective about the people that charge you up. And I won't even go back even further. You were saying to love your neighbor as yourself, and then you said something that we're good at loving ourselves, actually. And I kind of want to not necessarily challenge that, but maybe ask the question to maybe further define what that could mean. Because I mean, when people say like you loving yourself well, oh, bro, you got something in your beard, bro. I got you, bro.
I know. Keep me looking good.
But yeah, I mean, to love yourself well, I think there's a misconception of like, oh, that just means just do what you want all the time. That makes you happy. Like, is that actually loving yourself? Like, to love yourself is not this like, well, yeah, just do what makes you happy and do that often. because I think that also can be indulgence. Like, I don't think necessarily indulging yourself is loving yourself. Because, like, I mean, if you were to love your kids well, as a parent, would you tell your kids, do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy? You want to eat ice cream for dinner? Eat ice cream for dinner.
Yeah.
Like, you want to, like, stay up till 4 a.m.? Stay up till 4 a.m., whatever makes you happy. And is that like is that you loving your children by letting them do whatever they want because that makes them happy? Or is loving yourself actually doing what's best for yourself often, right? Yeah. And that could be going to the beach and hanging out, staring at the ocean for 5 hours. That could be like really good for you.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like I say that because I'm checking myself too, because I'm an extrovert. I love being around people in general. Like, even if I'm rolling solo around people. I'm going to the Grove and hanging out by myself, with like, thousands of people around me. That's me. That's me hanging out by myself. I'll go to a movie theater by myself, but there's a packed theater of other people that I'm not actually hanging out with. So, being selective, I think, is because I also do have like my core group of people that do energize me. Like, when I hang out with a certain person, I feel pumped and, all the things. So going back to the like actually loving yourself in a healthy type of way, it's making me kind of think about it in real time. So I think for me, quieting myself is the intentional times that I spend alone. And it's selective though. Like, I could spend time with a person that I don't feel like I need to be on per se, like I don't need to necessarily like, oh man, I gotta like inspire or encourage this person this whole time that I'm with them. Sometimes we could just hang, eat something, and not really say much other than just like, yo, like, what's good, like, what you been up to, like, even that kind of stuff. To quieting myself is like, you know what, today I am gonna not hang out with anybody, but I'm going to do the thing that I get recharged, which I'll go, hang in a public place where there are people around me. And, I like good weather. That's why I love it. The spring season, the sun's out, it's still cool outside. And like, the weather's great. So I try to be outdoors a lot. And even being around people that I'm not necessarily hanging out with, and then it's done intentionally where I can do something that I enjoy. Like, so I think, the loving yourself part, it's a combination, in my opinion, this is my opinion, a combination of something that you enjoy, something that recharges you, and something that like you could do with God, you know what I mean? And I think a misconception that we have a lot when we spend time with God is that the Bible has to be open, you know what I mean? I gotta be praying in some way, shape, or form, or I gotta be listening to some sort of sermon or reading some sort of book that gets me closer to my relationship with God. Like, we're like, that's spending time with God. And then we don't necessarily think that going to do something fun is spending time with God. Like, can you go to Disneyland with the Lord? Yeah. Absolutely you can. You know what I'm saying? Like, 100%. Because I'm over there, I'm like, Lord, man, Walt Disney, you created Walt Disney. This guy, like, imagined all this, and here we are, and then, like something.
Disney.
I do. I love it. And like, as you're talking about your wife, like going on these runs and stuff, I enjoy runs with the Lord. Like, literally, when I hit my morning runs, and like, it's something that I always acknowledge every time I do it is like, God, I don't even like this run that I'm on. Like, I'm not owed this. I'm not entitled to this run. It's not normal. So many people can't get up and run. They don't have legs to do that. They don't even have, maybe even if they don't have the time to do it, whatever it is. And I'm just like, God, like, I have these lungs that I can breathe in this clean air. I got these legs that work. I have a sound mind that even got me to be like, yo, you need to go run right now. So I'm like a mind that I can kind of like be, have some sort of mental fortitude to kind of do things. And I'm acknowledging all these things. And I'm like, Lord, this run is worship to you right now. Yeah. And I think that that's what, the scripture means, where it says like, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory. Like, even the most sort of mundane things that we do is something that we can glorify the Lord in. And so I think for me, like, there is times where I'm like, I'm in my room, everything, doors shut, it's quiet, that's quiet. But I can also be around energetic things And that can also be quiet for me because it's like, it's an intentional time where I'm like, I'm not letting anyone else into this space. And it's just me and God. And it does quiet my soul. Yeah. And I do feel like, to me, loving myself, like, yeah, I can go get an ice cream too. That's also like, yeah, go enjoy an ice cream. But like, go run that ice cream off now. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's also a part of loving yourself is to be healthy mentally, physically, all of that. So I like what you said about like kind of being selective with whether that's a person, people that you hang out with, or even the activity that you engage in, because it doesn't necessarily mean that things must be quiet for you to have a quieted spirit with the Lord. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I grew up in the version of Christianity that was, you know, the only time spent with God is when you're in a corner of a room with with worship in the background and
in your prayer closet.
In your prayer closet. And that stuff is very valuable and it's important, and versions of that should be done however you apply it, but it doesn't end there, you know, it shouldn't stop there, and it necessarily shouldn't even just kind of sit there in the sense of like how it was for me, because I would try to do that at a young age, and I'd be like, I just don't think I'm a good enough Christian because I can't do this, you know? And then now it's like I've gotten older in my faith and I've seen God active in my life. I'm like, oh man, there's the richness of a relationship with God and the richness with applying God's word, which goes back to like what I'm sitting quietly on and sitting on and just exposed outside my thoughts of where I'm at. It's just that element of like, okay, if Jesus tells us 2 greatest commandments, 10 commandments boiled down, and they, you know, the Jewish faith had thousands, but the 10 commandments boiled to 2 things: love God with your whole heart and soul, love others as you love yourself. I'm thinking to myself, well, is the key to the fulfillment in life loving God? And because what it seems like is Jesus is saying by default, you love yourself. Even if you do it negatively, right? So if I struggle, which I've had, you know, elements of that in my life with an anxiety or depression, that's still an element where you are elevating yourself above your surroundings. And so though that's a very natural thing to struggle with, it is still a love of self, because you're putting your problems, and it may come trauma or whatever, and you're elevating to a point that it really rests on your head a lot. So what it seems like Jesus is saying, like, hey guys, we don't really struggle with not loving ourselves. It's just how do you correctly love yourself? And could a part of unlocking that purpose for your life also have a great, powerful aspect of loving others in the same way that you prioritize yourself? You know, every day I prioritize myself. I wake up, I brush my teeth, I trim my beard, I look at my outfit, I put my shoes on. And so it seems like for the most part, and everyone's a little different, like we care about ourselves. I take my car to a car wash, I do whatever. You know, there's certain elements where we actively prioritize us, actively prioritize people we love. That's kind of an easy sell. But is it an easy sell to love the person at the grocery store? Is it an easy sell to love a stranger that I've never met, or someone that looks different from me? But it's a much harder sell.
Right.
So it seems like Jesus is like proposing this idea that like, could it be that God wants to do more in our life if we just take an active approach for caring about those around us who aren't people that we just know immediately, you know? And so I'm very quiet in that, because the moment I fixate on that idea, now I fixate on, well, have I done it? Who did I last do it to? When can I do it next? How can I? And so I'm quiet, because now I have, you know, with my brain that's always moving, now I'm just resting on this idea of like, how can I apply something that I feel like God is challenging me on to apply in my life. And it seems much more a lot of times that, not that everything is easy for somebody, everyone has their different challenges, but for someone that's extroverted, the idea of loving their neighbor, engaging in their neighbor, that's actually a very exciting endeavor for some of them. They're like, man, I get to talk to a stranger in the grocery line, or I get to talk to a stranger at the Grove. An extrovert has different challenges, where for an introvert to be like, hey, actively engage someone you don't know, it's like, oh no. It's like, and how, you know, how do I do that? And so there's certain areas that I'll feel stretched and challenged, and it's very quiet for me, because now I can like really sit with the Lord on those things. I love some of the stuff that you shared about like ADHD, how it affects you as a person.
And I'll be honest, I'm actually someone that suffers from a very similar thing, or at least one variation of what you described. And to a point where in my adult life, they diagnosed another thing about acute stress disorder. I don't even know what that is. But what's funny is I never followed up with all my doctors because I didn't want it to be permanently in my record anywhere. Yeah. Just in case it would mess with my health insurance.
Oh, wow. That's real.
Which is hilarious.
You were thinking ahead, bro.
But I'm just being, I'm outing myself right now on camera. But my wife has known this about me for, obviously she knows that I'm a little, I warned her of all these things as we were dating, of course, as she was getting into it. And I do have a very tough time settling. I can't settle very well. It wasn't too hard to, at least culturally, Koreans, they have like this old school way of learning things. It was just like all the rod.
Yeah.
The rod, yeah.
So like it was a very painful existence in my childhood. But what's interesting is how I didn't even realize that I didn't sit still until the age of 36.
Wow.
And I'm 37 or 35. I'm sorry, 35. So that means until 2 years ago, I never stood still.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I was doing that. That's how crazy it was for me, that I didn't understand what it meant to get quiet. I didn't even know what that was. I remember in my 30s and my 20s, my wife would ask, my poor wife would ask me, do you know, Kevin, that you don't hang out by yourself? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Yeah. She's like, well, if you're ever alone, if I've ever seen you alone, maybe you'll be like watching something. Like that's how you spend time alone. Because I told her like, yeah, I play games. I watch TV. She's like, no, that's not time alone. Yeah. You really don't sit. Yeah. And I'm like, and then in my 30s, I remember there was this one that really bothered me. I remember, and we'll get to more of my journey later, but in 30s, I remember what happened was my wife said, Kev, when you meet new people, you immediately think about and categorize if you can do business with them. Yeah. Why do you do that? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I don't do that. Yeah. I don't look at people like a number. I've never done this. She's like, no, you do this. And to a point that I have to force you to go hang out with your old friends. Yeah. I've noticed that you stopped hanging out with your old friends. I'm like, I mean, we're just into different things, yada, yada. I'll make all these excuses. And she goes, no, you don't want to hang out with them because you can't do business with them. And you already know that. So you stopped hanging out with them as much. I'm like, well, I don't really want to go shoot pool or shoot guns or whatever we used to do that was fun, or go to a PC room and like play games, or I don't want to do any of those things anymore. And then I would like have all these excuses for my wife. And then I didn't know what she was really talking about until at 35 years old, God finally had to sit me down and teach me what that meant. Like literally God had to intervene and go, this is how you sit with me. And when he taught me that, it started literally changing my life. I started realizing the quietness is so important. The stillness with the Lord is so important. No wonder I was so lost or so confused about what to do next, because I never sat down to listen. Yeah. For that many years, I just ignored it. And today, what quiet down looks like is it could be honestly anything. I love what Ben said. I'm more leaning towards what Ben does now, which is in anything, I'll just invite God, and hopefully where I'm not running, but I'm walking. Definitely not running, but I'll be walking with God, where I could sit with God, and I still do have to do the one thing, meaning, how you said you try to focus on one thing. That helps me to get quiet, and then I can do nothing. But it definitely requires a little like something that God will help me with. I need to wrestle with that one thing to quiet me down. And I love how you said that, Adam, because like I didn't even realize that's what I did. I thought I was just quieting down, but that's a lot more logistical, and it's more practical. I'll try to focus on that one idea that's like in my heart with God, and I'll just go real deep in that, and then that way it starts to get real quiet, and then it could be nothing, and then it can be nothing for me. I've gotten there now, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I realized that is what I do. I try to, okay, God, I'm just gonna sit and just think about what it means, like crisis of belief. Look at this decision that I have to make. Okay, let's just go in that, and I'll just sit there and think about that.
Yeah,
and I'm just in it. You know? Yeah. So I thought that was so good. That's such a smart way to like slow things down. Yeah, I love that. I got some hot questions for Adam.
Okay.
Speaking, I just bit into hot wing. I'm over here crying, bro. The sweat's starting to come out.
The mild was decent, so I thought to myself, I might try the hot. Right now that I'm looking at you,
I'm sweating just eating all of these. Yeah. I think it's on. I think it's on. Yeah, I think it's on. That's fine. Yeah. I'm actually, the sweat's kind of dripping down.
The hot is definitely hot.
Because I see you as such an awesome position at where you are in your church, and you're from generational faith where your father just really was obedient to God and just continued and built this amazing organization, big community. There's a school there too. There's so much going on in the church. You have a lot of sight. You get to see a lot of things that maybe some folks don't, because of the sheer amount of, it's kind of like data, like sheer amount of data you're kind of exposed to. And you have a lot of friends that serve God in the ministry world, which is also a unique view as well, from inside and outside the walls of the church. And a lot of what I do today is calling for outside the walls a lot. So my question to just kick things off is, when it comes to the church today, in your opinion, is it truly serving today's people of God? Like, where do you sit with that? Yeah. And the follow-up question to that would be, I know you see things going on. The answer could be yes, no, or whatever. Love to know why. And then I'd love to know where you wish it would be in the next few years. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a great question. It's very reflective for sure. Mm-hmm. By nature, my gift mix is a little bit more on the, like, a problem solving nature. So I like problems, and I like to help being part of the solution. Yeah. And so what I think overall with the church, and I think we have to dial in maybe what statement we're talking about in the statement, because what you're saying is really great, but you have the global church and then you have the national church. The global church is one thing, which is so unique and it's so beautiful. And there are many countries that don't even have our type of problem, right? Which would be maybe a lazy faith or unengaged faith or a capitalistic faith, if we put it in the kind of an American standard. Yeah. You have other nations and countries that are doing very beautiful things, but there's also in there persecution and other things which draw forth the type of faith that they have, right? Yeah. So if we're just which I would tend the conversation would be beneficial for just looking in the American landscape, whether it just be California or the nation. Overall, I think that, number one, as a culture and society in America in general, we are evolving and fragmenting like never before. Right. Social media, the iPhone, touch phones, internet phones, these have radically changed our lives. Yeah. Someone will argue for the better, for the worse, whatever that is. But here we are, right? Yeah. I just had a 17-year-old girl who's one of my kids' babysitters. She looks after my boys, and she was in her senior class, and she said there was a debate happening in her class on three things. She said, number one, is Elon Musk the Antichrist? Is Ryan Garcia, I guess, he's like a boxer, young kid boxer.
Yeah, he's a young boxer.
Is he a false prophet? Which I don't know if he claims to be a Christian or something like that. I don't know. And then she had, does God like AI or not? Artificial intelligence or not, right? So the first two were kind of silly. Like, Elon Musk, the Antichrist, not the Antichrist. Ryan Garcia, I don't know who he is, but he's he's probably about as impactful as I am, which I don't think very much. I don't think very highly of myself. So I was like, I wouldn't really worry about that. I said, but a great question you guys are asking is, how does God feel about AI?
What's up, stewards? We just want to take a moment to thank all the amazing supporters of Good Service. Thank you guys so much. We have exciting news today. We officially have a Patreon. If you join the Patreon today as a subscriber, you get exclusive content every single week.
From Q&As, solo reflection rounds, extended episodes, vlogs, and much, much more. You're going to find all of that exclusively on our Patreon. You can log on to patreon.com/goodservicepodcast. Thank y'all so much. God bless y'all. Back to the episode.
Hey.
That's a great question for 17-year-olds to be asking. And in short, I basically told them, in short, everything is under God's watchful eye. Everything will always be used for his glory. Could AI be a positive part of his future plan? Yes. Could AI be a negative part of his future plan, in which the enemy has corrupted and used and Satan has tried to develop in some way, shape, or form? If we read the book of Revelations and yada, yada. I said, maybe. I said, we don't know that. But what we do know is God has never been in heaven and said, where did that come from? He's completely aware of what's happening right now, which then remains to be seen that on a human level, then we are experiencing everything, what I would say is by the headlines every day. Every day is new news that we're trying to navigate. So could I say that the church could be in a better position? Yes. But if you read Revelations, if you read the book of Ephesians and 1 Corinthians, a lot of times the churches, because God loved to speak through communities of people, the churches. That's why you see Church of Ephesus, Church of Corinth. These are communal places defined by their area of gathering, city of gathering. A lot of times they tend to reflect their culture in some positive or negative. Right. But they do reflect their culture. I think right now in America, we have reflected our culture positively and negatively. So, and this would, and it's like, it's such a topic. It's probably something I think about a lot. It would turn into like a 10-hour podcast, but,
some highlights and lowlights.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the ways that you can positively affect your culture, which I think our church does, I think you guys are doing with your movement of what you're doing, is you utilize the way that culture communicates to share a message and help people find purpose, calling, character, and ultimately a relationship with the Lord. And so some of that deals with branding and marketing. The moment you and I leave our house, not even get on the freeway, just leave our house, we are being, the American eye is built for marketing. That's just it. Since post-World War II, marketing companies have become the cornerstone, next to capitalism, the cornerstone of America, which would be a byproduct in that American Christianity would be a byproduct of marketing and branding. Because if I can't get on the freeway, I mean, we look at Howlin Ray's, the boxes are designed perfectly. The bags it's held is perfect. We wouldn't say like, how stupid is this? Why don't they just give us a white piece of paper to wrap the chicken? Why not? Why do they have to put their brand on it and blah, 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 blah? Well, because it helps package the material in a beautiful way, right? So I think some ways that we criticize the church and we think, whether they're doing clothing or a coffee shop or something like that. I mean, that's going to come out of a byproduct that's not being imported into the Philippines, right? In their church there. That's an American byproduct of how we would communicate with people, reach people. People, if me and you if all of us are going to hang out, we don't want to do dinner, where are we going to meet at? Coffee shop. Right. So the American church strategy would be like, well, if we want people to gather at church, what will we do? Put a coffee shop. So I don't think that's Jesus would come in there and he would flip your table of your coffee shop where people sometimes take it. I don't think it's that. I think we are exhibiting our culture. And then at the same time, if you read Ephesians and 1 Corinthians, there are negative forms where you can input your culture, which to me, the way that we value marriage is a negative impact of our culture today. Marriage is like Christian divorce rates are as high as any other divorce rate. And so there's been a lack of involvement of parenting, which the scriptures make it clear on how a mother and father don't provoke your children to anger and love your children, teach your children the word of God, and have this really intense involvement in your children's. I meet so many teenagers today, like even in our church community, that just like their parents aren't engaged at all. Yeah. And so, the kids call it the body count, right? Like, so their body count is like so high, and they're saying, my parents have no involvement. They don't care. They let me go do whatever. And so I think if I were to look at the church as a large, I think number one, it starts with ourselves. It starts with a deep reflection of self. Yeah. How are we applying the gospel? And I do think church leaders should take more of an account on what about American culture we be rejecting. And I don't think there is enough conversation about that. I think there's kind of, and each culture is different. And we could look at the white church, we could look at the black church, we could look at, I don't know much about the Korean church, but we could look at that. We could look at the multicultural church. Right. Yeah. I think each one has adopted certain cultural phenomenons of America that should be rejected. Yeah, that's right. And they each differently have done it in a certain way. I think the guilt, I come from a non-denom world, the guilt of that could have been a capitalistic model of the church, which was just all about finances and financial blessing and all these kinds of things like that, which was an abuse in the 80s and the 90s. Not a heavy emphasis on pastors, on character and conduct and all these things like that. And so I think from where in my church world where I sit, those things are now being talked about, which is great, positive thing. I think certain things within the church haven't been talked about in terms of how community should be done, and kind of like to what your big thing is like, how does it look like on the outside of the four walls of the church? I don't think that has been expressed enough because for whatever reason, the churches have become, some churches, and we can fall towards that, become like membership clubs, type of atmosphere, right? Members only atmosphere. Right. And so I think there are a lot of things that we can work on, but I also think there are a lot of things that God has done within the church, and God will use the church. You read Revelations, there's 7 churches. Almost all of the churches are doing something wrong. Yeah. This idea that we're going to fix the church, or we can have a perfect church, I don't know that that's the case, but I think that we can pursue that, and we should self-correct. And I mean, over the years, I've been corrected on stuff. And one of the things that I got convicted most, I was in my 20s, and our church was a very traditional black church. We were a historic black church, so we did choir robes and big wooden pulpit. My dad wore suit and tie every single Sunday, and so in a pursuit to kind of get younger people in church and stuff like that, on one Easter we decided basically to rent like a whole new look and feel of church. So we rented an LED wall and lights and all these things like that, and we're like, man, we're gonna like try to reach a whole new crowd. But remember, it was a rental. They were all rentals. So we do this on Easter. I was working out at a CrossFit gym at the time. 8 people that go to my CrossFit gym, because I invited them to church. They came to church that Sunday. This was about 10 years ago. And they went to church. I saw them the next Monday. I said, hey, what'd you think of our Easter service? They said, man, it was a lot of fun. It was really great. And they're like, we loved, now at the time, this was a big deal. Now it's just really normal. And they're like, we're glad, we love that you weren't like super uptight and religious. Like there was like lights, and it felt very modern, and like, that's dope. I think that's what I'm looking for in a church. And at the same, in the back of my head, I was like, oh shoot, that's not going to be here next week. And I taught, the Lord taught me a very valuable lesson about how to, why do I need to attract people, and why do I need to have the heart behind attracting people? Right. And so it was out of a pursuit to come off modern rather than a pursuit to seek and find lost people and help them find their purpose in life and help them grow a relationship with the Lord. So we may have those things today, but we always tell our church, like, this is just helping us with our messaging. This is just helping us with our understanding of culture, but we can do away with this tomorrow and our faith should still be there.
Right. Amen.
We don't go to Sunday to be attracted to God. We go on church on Sunday to be anchored in Christ. And that's something I've been really thinking about a lot lately, because I do think in American church's desire to reach people with the language that America's speaking, we've made church attractive and not anchored. And like, we have to be able to criticize ourselves and be like, okay, we got to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
And so for us, we've been trying to add some orthodoxy in our church service, some doxology in our church services, so that we can help divine the anchoring. So like, newly for our church, we stand for the reading of God now. We'll be going in later in this year to like reciting the Apostles' Creed together. And so and there's other things we've done that will transition us into a little bit deeper, more historic Christianity. Because just what I'm trying to train my congregation and even train myself in is, I don't come to this because I want to go to like a political rally and be like hoorah on Sunday. Right. There's elements of that can happen, but it's like, man, I want to leave and I want to be anchored deeper in Christ. Yeah. And I want to have community outside these four walls that help me in my anchoring and how I can help others anchor. And so, I don't know if that's a long way around, but it's something I think about often.
I appreciate the way you answered that. The reason why I asked you specifically, Adam, is because I knew you would be open about it. Be open about not just saying, hey, wait a minute, we're all doing good things here, but just to be open about it and to just have like a really good view of where things are. And I ask it not because like I think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, there are plenty of things that we could do better in, but you know, I love the church, man. That's where I found God and I found Jesus. And so I just want it to be known that, hey, there's good guys out here really trying to do good work. For the Lord,
I love this topic though, because you know, I'm learning a lot about going even to this Bible study that we've been doing for about a year here, and then trying to understand like what it is that's even being done here. You know, what do we even call it? Like, you know, people ask us like, what is this a Bible study? Is it a church? Is this a Christian social gathering? Like, what is it? And, you know, for the longest, we didn't know what to call it. We're like, it's Bible study. I don't know. Like, stop asking me like so many like tough questions. You know what I mean? Like, let's just keep it simple. Let's just Bible study. But I'm also learning to go a little bit deeper into it by even asking myself, well, what is church? You know, and then I'm learning now. I mean, like, again, shout out Will. Like he sent us a bunch of stuff about like check out micro churches. Like, I'm like, what's a micro church, bro? Yeah. You know, and so I mean, you coming from a church that can be defined as like a mega church, right? You have like thousands of people in your congregation, and then you do have these smaller churches. Call it a micro church or call it a Bible study that meets at a home on a Monday night. You know, and I'm learning, and I'm not speaking from here's what I think it is. I am really asking questions, because I'll always take it back to the early church, right? Like the church of Ephesus, church of Corinth. Was that a mega church? You know, were there thousands of people showing up at the church of Ephesus, and like, were they dressed up in like the finest of robes, and you know what I mean? Or were they just normal people gathering in homes, breaking bread, reading the scriptures, living life with each other, praying together, people like you know, like doing life, people getting healed, like all the stuff that like, it's just, I mean, that's what they were doing then. Yeah. And culturally, and I'm glad you brought up the cultural piece of it, because though I totally, when you're talking about like what parts of culture should the church reject, that's interesting, because I think like absolutely. But there's also what parts of culture should the church embrace, because you know, even the early church, was that not a cultural thing that they were doing? Because the culture, they dressed how they dressed, they met how they met in the places that were accessible to them. They spoke in the jargon, the language of the time, you know, whatever technology was available to them there, they used it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So when you talk about AI and, you know, smartphones, it's like, well, that's the technology that's available to us today. Yeah. Therefore, we should use it. Why should we reject what's already here that everyone's using? And I grew up in the church school of thought that like, keep it old school. Like No need to adapt, adopt anything that's, oh, now you're becoming seeker friendly. Now you're just trying to be cool because you're trying to package it attractively. And I think it's a fine line, because I do think it's a heart posture thing. Because let's just say, based off of the culture that you're actually living in, let's say people dress a certain way, talk a certain way, do a certain type of thing. Yeah. Should you now not do that because you're like, oh, well, I'm a Christian. Christians aren't supposed to do those things. So I should put on the suit. I should talk this way because this is church talk. This is church garb, because I want to make sure I'm staying true to the way that the church is supposed to be. It's like, what do you mean the church is supposed to be? How is the church supposed? Isn't the church supposed to be authentic and reflective of the life that we live, and Jesus comes into that life as we are? We don't need to change anything. We don't need to adopt a certain way of anything in order for church to be done correctly. And so I'm learning right now, and I feel like I am in the process of deconstructing even my understanding of what a church is, or what church is. There are scale of mega church, there are scale of small church, and I guess micro churches now, and then midweek studies, midweek gatherings that don't have to be on Sundays. And I do believe people are encountering God in all of those places. That's right. At the mega church, at the Monday Bible study, at the smaller church that, down the street. And I feel like God is in all of those places. And so I do think that this conversation about, how we define church, but also this sort of separation of culture and church, is it supposed to be separate? Because I don't think they separated it back in the early church. They were of the culture and they did church. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I guess, going off of that too, being somebody, as a pastor of a church that's kind of considered on that mega church scale, what are the challenges, I guess, that you sort of face? Because I'm sure you can catch a lot of, it's an easy target on your back. You're like, oh, look at this mega church pastor. He's probably in it for the X, Y, and Z. He's just another one of those guys that we hear it all in social media all the time, right? Pastors who get caught up in this or that. And so, you could get put into this category of oh, he's just another mega church pastor. You know what I mean? How do you navigate that?
I mean, I think number one of the ways I first navigated on the outside of what you're saying, that maybe someone's outside opinion, is what I always try to keep at the forefront, speaking of culture, because not every culture does this or is like this. It's becoming more broader, but the American culture has made every person a critic. So
yeah. For real though.
You can vote anything.
Yeah, we'll see you in the comments.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
See you on the comments for this. If I watch a movie, I can go to IMDb, I can vote for it. Sure, it's got viewer reviews. I can go on Yelp, I can review Howlin Ray's. I can go on this podcast, I can review this podcast. And so talking of culture, current American culture, which didn't exist 100 years ago, was this idea that I can be a critic about everything. And what you're seeing with a lot of American Christians is every Christian is kind of a critic about our own thing, know? Yeah. And so, and I could do it for days, and I can do, microphone off, cameras off. And I do it all the time with my pastor friends. I do it with my close friends, is we can have a friendly conversation of analysis on anything, politics, church, blah, 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 blah. But because we've all been given this microphone called a cell phone, and we can go on Facebook and we can go on everything else, we immediately, we're trained right now that before I receive something for all it is, first I have to evaluate and criticize and become a critique, become a critic. So what I nailed right away is I've fixated in my head, I could do all the good in the world on behalf of my church. I could be the best pastor in the world. Right now, both of our campuses have 2 feeding centers. We give out $11 million worth of food and groceries every single year. Wow. $11 million. It's donated to us by Costco, Sam's Club, but the monetary equivalent is $11 million. Mm-hmm. Wow. And then our church gives towards that because I have to have a building. We have a walk-in refrigerator that's 5 times the size of this room, you know, with a freezer.
That's crazy.
That thing costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and it costs tens of thousands of dollars a year to maintain.
Wow.
It's all to feed people who are impoverished, right? I could say that all day. Someone's still going to say, yeah, but you're wearing Jordans, Adam. You know, so, you know, like, it doesn't, you know.
Oh my God.
I could talk about the free counseling we do. I could talk about how we have 5 full-time pastors who are counselors to not just people in our church, people outside the church. So I could talk all day long. Man. And what seems to happen is, like, if I'm with an audience of like atheists and stuff, because sometimes they get brought in by companies to share about what our church does for talking about community impact. And there will be people who are like atheists and, you know, other forms of religions, and they'll come up and just be like, wow, so blown away. I never knew churches did that. Wow, what churches, like, I don't know any other religion who's doing that kind of stuff. That's beautiful, blah, 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 blah. But then next to them is a Christian who's been in church 20 years, and they're like, yeah, but look at that guy's Apple Watch. He's got the,
why
like, you know,
is
like,
that? Like, what, but that's
true.
a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is it that Christians are the ones to criticize Christians the most?
Oh, yeah. Man.
Yeah.
So
it's
sad.
so weird.
I mean, yeah, we definitely have, you know, we crime ourselves on each other all day long, right? Christian on Christian crime. It happens all the time. You know,
Christ on Christ crime, man. We gotta stop that.
Stop
and
it.
you know, and Jesus calls for unity in the church. I think there's a thing, and we like have a rule on Beyond the Letter because our podcast, because we have open-ended conversation and we let anything be talked about. One of the things we try to do is we say, hey, let's criticize and critique ideas, not people, you know, because the moment you go towards people, now you are becoming a critic, and it becomes very personal, right? But I can take something maybe a preacher did, unfortunately, on stage or whatever, and it's like, okay, we already know that was bad. Let's talk about what leads someone to get to that point. Why do they feel like they need to do that? Let's talk, because intrinsically we all have that kind of that person inside of us, right? That desire to go viral or whatever. Like let's look at the inner man within this idea, right? Because I think the criticism is such an easy hole to fall into. So when it comes to that, like going, you were saying, when it comes to the outside views, I always keep that in mind. But I also keep in mind that I'm willing to be corrected on anything. So I try to keep a humble heart. There was one time a woman who just kept going off on me on social media about Halloween and all these things like that. And I don't celebrate Halloween, but I also hold the opinion of like, use wisdom, but also like, you don't have to ride the whole day off, because actually the Christian church made it famous because kids were doing tricks, and they were like, this was 100 years ago in the 1920s. They were knocking out windows in Chicago and New York, and they were just being bad. They didn't wear costumes or anything. They were just being bad on this day. And churches in the inner city said, hey, we're going to open up our churches and we're going to hold like costume pageants, and we're going to give out candy. And then and then when the suburbs became a thing, once cars were really taking off and people were able to move more outside the city, people said, hey, what we used to do in the church, let's just do it in our neighborhood. Let's do it around the block, because it's our suburbs now. And so the idea of Halloween that you know now was actually invented by the church as a strategy to help make it safer. Right? So, you know, you take this idea of that type of thing, right? And so we don't do something on Halloween night, but we do something the week before and just let kids dress up if they want and give out candy. We do what the church did 100 years ago, you know? And this woman just like, she just kept blasting me, comment, review. So finally I just DM'd her and I said, hey, let's get on a Zoom. Let's talk about it. I said, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear about it.
Sure.
The moment we get on the Zoom, she kind of changed her tune, and she was like, wow, you just have such a big following. You have such a big church. I never think you would sit down with someone, this is her saying, right? Someone as little as me and even care to hear my opinion. I said, well, you're making a lot of noise. So man. I told her, you're making so much noise. I figured if you're this passionate about it, I ought to hear you out.
Sure.
And so she gave her opinion, and I gave mine. I said, hey, I think we're going to see different on this. I said, matter of fact, what does your husband think about it? Oh, my husband thinks I'm crazy. I said, well, I think I kind of agree with your husband. Not that you're crazy, but that he sees it differently. So I said, so you have to keep in mind, like, not even your household is unified with this idea, and you expect. You don't even go to she didn't even go to my church.
Yeah, right.
I said, you don't even go to my church.
Right.
And I'm supposed to adopt your philosophy when you can't even get your husband to adopt your philosophy. Because she mentioned how like she used to dabble in witchcraft and all these things. Sure. And man, I prayed for her there and we left very amicably, and she's never land blasted again. Right. And so, I'm aware that people have very passionate opinions, and I'm aware that not every mega church has done everything right, but not even every small church has done everything right. And the Catholic Church has not done everything right. And so, you could go on, right? So one of the things I try to be open to is, could I be wrong? And no matter how big my church is, I'm aware that I could be wrong. And my friends who know my heart and my leaders who know my heart, they may not always catch either if we are in the wrong. Yeah. So I'm very open to criticism. I'm open to give time to criticism if it's come appropriately and come with a true intention. Yeah, so I'm very open to it. And I keep my heart open so that we can adjust and so that we can pivot as much as we can with integrity. So I think no matter how big your movement comes, your big church comes, you should be open to hearing other people's opinion that isn't right next to you where they totally understand what you're saying. And so I keep that in mind. In terms of how we try to like make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible in terms of what their needs are, because that's another big thing is like mega churches, big churches get big, they don't want to know you and you don't want to be known and all these other type of things like that. And so we try to do a really good job at creating as much communal spaces, encouraging as much outside of the church as we come. I think one of the bad sides of the mega church is it does encourage and propagate for an introvert to get lost in the church. So it's not just the mega church's problem. Some people make it big because they don't want to be known. It's like if you ever watched the movie Great Gatsby or read the book, there's a statement by a girl in a party. She says, I love big parties because you could get lost in it and no one knows you're there, And so I think many people like mega churches for that reason. It's so big, I could get in on for a Sunday message and I can get out. I don't know too many mega church pastors who's okay with that type of Christian.
Right.
And so the idea that the mega church just wants the people, wants the money, wants to get big or anything like that. No, that there probably are some. I don't personally, and there exist, and I've heard of them, but I don't know many who are like, man, I just love when people come in and come out and just drop their tithe off and leave. I don't know many pastors who have big churches that would legitimately say that. They would say, no, man, true. I want my people in small groups. I want my people growing in their faith. I want their children's lives to be transformed. You could, a lot of what we're doing at the church's scales we're doing, it takes a lot of financial investment.
Totally.
And so the idea that it could just be like pocketed and run away with, number one, that's extremely illegal, and the IRS is very involved in audits. It's not possible, right? Like, so you could like, the idea that a pastor is just, or their leadership is just like, there's audits that happen, there's IRS that's involved, it's very hard to do that with just the church's money. Normally those guys that are doing that, it's because they got other gigs going on and they're merging those gigs. So I think a lot of the criticisms come out of a place of ignorance, even though there are some things that have been abused, right? So we try to make sure, like, we have board, we have elders, we have deacons that hold us accountable to make sure we have integrity in finances and spiritual leadership and all those type of things like that. Nowadays, you have the court of public opinion. So there is a lot of stress on that. Hey, if we do this wrong, this is going on Yelp tomorrow. So let's talk. Look, people like, you're aware that, like, I don't want to abuse anybody or people. We want to own integrity and leadership, and we want transformation to happen. And so with our team, we're working really hard at trying to make, for us, a big church as small as possible. And for us, like for me, I do my podcast, and one's on just our Christian faith, one's on marriage. Like that's coming out of a lot of grind for me and my wife. And we don't make any money from that. That's just ministry, and that's our desire for it, is to help people walk daily in their faith. Like you said, Monday through Friday. And I intently care about that. Awesome. I care about the Monday and Friday faith. Right. I grew up in the Black church. So in the Black church, it's all about Sunday. That's all it's about. It really doesn't matter what happens Monday through Friday. It's all about wearing your Sunday best, showing up. Yeah. And so we had to change our culture from just being about Sunday and being about an active pursuit of our faith Monday through Friday. And we're intensely working on that. As the word would call us to do, is to approach our faith with fear and trembling. Like, we're trying to do that as best as we can.
I actually have a question for the group, because I was thinking about how we all met, right? We all met at an event called Young Guns. Ben invited us out there, and that's where I met you, Adam. And not just you, but everyone I met there was just so grounded, right? I felt like nobody was flying in the sky. Nobody had ego on their shoulder. No, just literally nobody. And I didn't even ask about what anyone did or what churches they had. I didn't research anybody. I was just there, right? I know they sent the list out. I know they have the pedigrees. Everybody has some sort of resume. But other than that, I was in a season where I just didn't care about that, because God's been humbling the crap out of me. So I just showed up, and I literally was like, I don't even know what room I'm in. I don't know what anybody does, but it's all good because we're all loving God. I'm sure these are all men of God. And I just trusted the process because I trusted Ben. He's not going to bring me to some cult thing, So I'm like, Ben, don't you do this to me? No, I'm just kidding. But we got there, and sure enough, everybody was super grounded, and everybody was super just really there to just sit, rest with the Lord, be with good brothers, and just talk about where they are with God and learn from the sages, the guys that's been around Jesus longer than us, so we could speak into each other's lives. That's really what we were there for at this retreat. It was so beautiful. And what's interesting too is after the fact, now we're separated from one another. We're like, okay, I want to Instagram friend some of these guys. I want to connect with them. And as I'm connecting with y'all, I'm like, dude, you guys are like monsters in faith. You know what I mean? Like, God's given so much on the plates of so many of these folks. And I think I remember I had this overall sense of gratitude in that moment for me, because and Ben could attest to this too, in our lives, we've been given these strange platforms where there's a lot of external worldly noise that says you're different because X, Y, Z. But reality, we're just men that want and yearn for our Creator. That's it. It's really simple. Yeah. We've just been given different things. So I guess the question I want to impose is, what are some practical things as Adam, as Ben, what do you guys do that keeps you grounded, especially today in this season? What keeps you grounded where it's all the lights, noise of the world, none of that matters, and you could actually show up and answer one angry, person that you want to talk to. You can actually sit down with someone that's even in your industry, but just see them as someone as just a regular guy that's yearning for God. What is some practical things? I love to talk about that, because I know how it is in LA, i.e. California, or even just the US itself, where ego, clout, that's all around us. And because of our platform, it's hard, because they'll have 10,000 ideas of who Adam is before they even meet you. They have 10,000 ideas of who Ben is before they meet him. And I get that all the time because of the businesses I'm a part of. So it's just but that's not who we are. So where does that grounding come from? What are some practical things? I'd love to hear that.
For me, I try to be very as intentional as I can with this. For me, number one is I have a core established group of 4 men that I'm accountable to. So that's number one. I can name them. I never have problem, because some people say it and they're like, well, name them. They won't. I can name them. Right. Phil is one. Phil could speak into my life anytime about anything. He has before in the past, many times, and I vice versa can do to him. Aaron, he's one of our pastors on our team. My brother Nathan, and then another friend named Heron. Those 4 guys they're involved in every business. They know. Phil has my shared calendar on my phone. Phil can know where I'm at any time. My brother and my wife have my shared location at all times. And so they can pull up at any time and know where I'm at. And so I have a multitude of people all the time who can know who I'm talking to, what I'm doing, where I'm at. And so this idea for me of being accountable, I welcome it. And I know the type of person I can become without that. I also have 3 established mentors in my life who are all sages. They're all men in their 60s who I've made a promise to them and myself that I'll never lie to them. So they could ask me anything. How's my marriage? Whatever, what's going on in my finances, anything. They could ask anything. And I've made an integral promise to always keep that truthful and honest. Me and my wife have set parameters in our marriage of how we invest in our marriage. And so we try at least once a week to at least share coffee or a meal together as a date night or a date afternoon. So at least once a week. If we skip it, then we have to bank it basically. So then the next week we got to do 2, So we try not to just go, oh, we missed this week. You know, we got to catch it.
Right.
We have rules on our intimacy nowadays because we had periods in our life where we lacked intimacy. And I struggled a lot because of it in terms of just like bitterness towards her and stuff like that. And so her and I have this like, this bond of like, hey, intimacy looks like this weekly and we can make time for it. We're gonna make time for each other. And so we connect with each other physically, and scripture does command that, it says, do not deny your husband or wife your body. And so we have rules around that. And not that like we tax each other or ticket each other if we don't meet those rules, but we do have established agreement. Like, hey, this is what intimacy looks like. I have established role with my sons. And so even though they're very young, there's certain things that I've said that I won't miss out on and I won't skip out on. And so my boys hear, I'm sorry, and will you forgive me a lot from me? And so I don't just say, hey, I'm your dad, big, no, when I've messed up, say, hey, son, I'm sorry, I missed your game today. Here's why, this and that. And then the last thing is as I'm being accountable and I'm being poured into, I also pour out to others. So I have about 4 young men that I disciple and I pour my life into, so that I'm not just like this lake that just is like everyone's looking out for me. And so Jermaine, Gabe, a few others, these are guys that I can name to say that I call on them, I check on them. I want to see them succeed in life. And so I pour into them. And so those are just some of the main factors that for me, it keeps me grounded, because I could easily, it would not be hard to, with the position I'm in or you guys are in, to take a platform, have thousands of people that you're leading and just like ivory tower, separate yourself. And I do things my way. It's my way or the highway. It's it just takes one decision to get you to that point. Right. And so, I just tell people all the time, they go, how do I know you're leading with integrity? I said, the moment you see me isolate myself and cut myself off from everyone, know that there's something wrong. Right. But until then, you can go to Phil. Yeah. If you go to Phil one day and you go, oh man, he cut us all off, then start now getting worried. But until that point, it feels like, no, I'm with him yesterday. He's good, man. Yeah. Okay. That's really good. Like that's what I'm trying to do.
I just gonna do a quick summary of that, and we're gonna go to Ben. The summary I want to put on that was a great mentor of mine. It said, you always want to have someone in front of you, next to you, and behind you.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, that's it.
It literally described it to the T, man.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of creating rules and boundaries for yourself. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Even when, God gives us these things to follow, they're not to rain on our parade. They're not to restrict us from having a good time. Like God is saying, live in these ways because this is the best life that you're going to have. And for you to be able to open up yourself and set rules with your wife, your mentors, your friends, your children, you know what I mean? Like, I think that is something that, that without those rules, your groundedness cannot exist. So I love that that's something that you acknowledge for yourself, and those rules are to protect you essentially from yourself, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so with that, one final question that we love to ask all of our guests. So shout out Howlin Ray's for this bomb meal. We frequent these amazing restaurants that provide good food, good experiences, and good service. But we also believe that everybody has the ability to serve well in some capacity. So for you, Adam, what does good service mean to you?
Oh, man. You guys ask this to everyone every time?
Yeah. We do.
You caught it.
Yeah. Number one, I think, and you guys start the podcast this way, I think that the first way to good service starts with gratitude. Always remembering that, I mean, at least for me and my lens, the way I view it is, I don't deserve anything that I have. I didn't, though I have hard work, everything is the Lord in everything that I do. And I'm trying to do everything to the glory of God. So I think good service begins first to say, I don't do this for myself because I could pursue good service if it's because I personally want you to mention Adam in the reviews. Like, bring up Adam in the reviews. Adam was the man. Adam was the best. And it's like, yeah, see, that's why I give good service, because they be shouting me out and they see me and I get more followers, or I go viral, or I get, my church gets bigger. But that's not for me. That's not my pursuit in why I want good service. Ultimately, if I bring it to the highest level, ultimately, when I stand before God, I want to hear from Jesus, well done, good and faithful servant. Yep. So I want to give good service because I want to hear well done one day. And God is a God of excellence, and God is a God of goodness and mercy. Amen. And so I think that the way I serve others should excel with that type of service. And everywhere that the Lord has brought me, I really, honestly, I didn't ask for it, nor did I want it. So church size or whatever, I'd be so happy. And my wife laughs at it all the time. I'd be so happy to pastor a church of 200 people. Like we have one of our campuses, it's 400 people. Every time I go there, I go, Lord, why didn't you send me to something like it? Cause I just love it. I love that I get to know everyone. Right. I love, cause you hear my personality, it's kind of selective relationship. So it's like, I can kind of develop a relationship and, getting 1 or 2 new visitors a week, I'm good with, you know. But sometimes on a Sunday, we'll get 200 first-time visitors, So it's like, that actually really, like, that is not something I get excited about. I get very anxious around because I want to know people. I want to have great service. But so then I've had to just release and be like, God, this is your story. This is what you're doing. I pour into my team to make sure that we have a servant's heart everywhere that we go. And we don't pursue size and we don't pursue growth. We pursue health. And if something's healthy, then it'll grow. And if it doesn't need to grow, then we know the Lord has said, okay, you're good there. You know, that's what I want you to do. So good service to me is just completely embracing the unknown and embracing God's attitude and his involvement in everything. And if I give my whole heart to it, and then I just leave space for God to do the rest, I'll be the happiest person in the world. Because I know in my heart, one day I'm going to hear well done. And I live for an audience of one, and he's in heaven. And so I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And good thing that God doesn't leave Yelp reviews and God don't leave, YouTube comments. So I'm good with him and my pursuit of him. And if I love him and I love others, I think that I'll serve people well and serve him well, which is what I'm most concerned with, That's
dope. That's dope. Yeah. Love that. What is a way that our listening audience can serve you during this time?
Oh man. I mean, best way, just keep praying for me. By this time, when's this going to air? Does it air right away or
this will probably air in about a month or so.
In a month or so? Okay. Yeah. So in a month from now, I'll officially be the senior pastor of our church.
Let's go.
April 21st. Okay. When I am.
Yeah.
So
for those folks who don't know where the church is at,
church is in Rancho Cucamonga, Inland Empire. We also have a campus in Pomona and P-Town. And so of the church? Just Abundant Living Family Church.
There it is.
Yeah. So Abundant Living Family Church, and my dad started it 30 years ago. We celebrate 30 years this year. I'll be taking over senior pastor.
Congrats,
man, just be praying for me, pray for my wife, pray for our church, because we're doing a lot of stuff this year in terms of wanting to reach people and minister to people. So we're excited about it.
And where can people find you on socials and then hear more of your stories, man? You got the podcast.
Yeah. So if you want to hear me for 3 hours a week, 5 or 4 on top of sermons. If you want to catch out my actual sermons, you can on YouTube just type in Abundant Living Family Church or alfc.church in Instagram, and my sermons will be on there. Our Beyond the Letter podcast, which is like the Christian Joe Rogan, basically.
Yes.
That's called Beyond the Letter. That's on Spotify. You guys been on it before, and it was my grandma's favorite episode. Was you guys? Yes, I forgot to tell you guys.
I need to meet your
grandma, who's in her 80s, bro.
Amazing.
She came to me and she told me, "Tell your friends that I loved that episode."
Wow.
You know,
I want to give your grandma a big hug.
Yeah. Come back. We'll go back.
She said it was her favorite, and when you guys come back, I'll have her come. She's the best. She's full of energy. You would think she's like 50, but she's in her 80s. So she loved it. So Beyond the Letters, our podcast, it's on everything, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. And then me and my wife do a once a week marriage one under Beyond the Letter called Beyond I Do. So living life beyond the altar of I Do. And so we deal with everything on there. So we deal with husbands' wandering eyes to dating stuff, premarital stuff.
Hey, I'll be on that
we touch it
Honestly,
all, bro.
I listen to Beyond I Do more than I do.
Keeping
it real, dog.
He is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, bro.
My man needs to get married.
It's a lot of gems on that. Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Beyond I Do is fun because it goes into more of our natural conversations. And my wife is great because she's willing to have conversations as a wife that maybe some wives would be want to talk about with their husband or whatever. So we get, hopefully, the way I summarize is we're hopefully having a conversation that you wish you could have with your spouse. Hopefully open a door, or the person you're dating, open a door to that conversation, right? So that one is our most successful podcast, even though it started only 5 months ago or 4 months ago, but we enjoy it. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah. So man,
and then
thank you guys.
Personally, you're on IG, Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Adam Mesa, stuff like that. It's all mainly it's all collabs with Beyond the Letter in our church. So if you follow those two, because all the team does is hit collaborate when they post, and then I accept on my Instagram. I do some stories here and there, but nothing too crazy.
We'll plug all that in the show caption description. Adam, dude, thank you so much for coming out, spending some time breaking bread with us, man. We appreciate you, and we'll definitely do it again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for waiting in that Howlin line too. That's a love language in and of itself.
I had to do it. I was like, my guy's coming through.
My God.
You got Howlin, but it was the time you put into it. Get it? That's what's impressive.
Yeah, shout out
thank you
Howlin Ray
guys
again, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning into another episode. Good service. We'll catch y'all on the next one. We out. Peace. Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, and leave us that 5-star rating. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Good Service Pod, and on YouTube at Good Service Podcast.
Thank you. Peace.